everybody. Welcome into Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. It's our Thanksgiving edition. A little bit different. We got Jeff Sintel out of the country doing who knows what. And as a special holiday treat, we have some of the folks that you usually hear making picks through the magic of technology, pre-recorded as it is. Well, this week, they are joining us live to make their picks live. So none of us have any idea how any of this is going to go. I'm sure it goes off the rails fast, but nonetheless, it's going to be a good time. Mike Griffith, Connor Riley with us, through the magic of video teleconference power here to make these picks this week. Gentlemen, first of all, welcome into the program. Mike, it's nice to have you actually in person thus far this year after being pre-recorded every other week. Good to have you as part of the show.
I feel alive.
Well, that's nice to know. And Connor, much the same way. It's nice to have you here as well. After last year, we should remind folks that year one of Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, you were a part of the live show each and every week. Your contract now stipulates that you must be pre-recorded. So it's nice to have you back live here as well.
Yeah, I like to think that being live last year really helped my performance when I hit on 59% of my picks. And this year, it has just been a disaster with the pre-recorded. So I'm hoping for a little bit better of a week this week.
And Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews, I'll say hello to you as well and say I hope you're getting ready to enjoy a happy holiday season, beginning with Thanksgiving on Thursday. I know this is also a busy time at work as, folks look to take care of those last-minute, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs, all the things that R.S. Andrews does for folks. I know there's some emergency calls that come out this time of year, but hopefully you're able to break away a little bit and enjoy some time with your friends and family and have a little turkey and some good food and everything that goes along with that.
Oh, yeah. This is always one of the best weeks of the year. A lot of food, football, tasty beverages, and, looking forward to it.
No doubt that's the case. Before we make our picks for this week's games, I want to go give you an update on where the standings have been thus far for the year. A lot of games to pick last week. Biggest slate for the season. A week ago, we picked 10 games, and if you take a look on your screen, you'll see how things currently stand. Mike Griffith, who's had a tremendous run all year long at 40-27 on the year, was 6-4 last week. Jeff Sintel just below that at 37-30. He split it last week at 5-5. Dari Payro continues to climb the standings, 36-31 after 5-5 week a week ago. The Dog Nation Daily Audience continuing to have a winning season on the year. They are 34-33, also 5-5 with their picks. Connor and I both tied at the bottom, 31-36 on the year. Connor 4-6 last week. Me 6-4 a week ago. So I'm the only person that can say winning week 2 weeks in a row. So hopefully we're looking to build some momentum on the basis of that. But I am holding everybody up at the very bottom of the standings for right now. A lot of games to pick this week. Some of these do have the traditional rivalry flair that we've come to expect from Thanksgiving weekend. A couple of our top 25 matchups outside the SEC also are, outside the SEC are fun top 25 matchups. We'll look at those on the Black Friday slate just after this show airs, at least for the first time on Friday. A lot of these games will be taking place. We'll have some fun with all of that. Let me remind you how it typically goes. Normally, we hear from a panel of Dog Nation experts. Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley. The Dog Nation Daily Audience makes their picks. I weigh in with my pick. A consensus is established. Then Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews decides if he wants to go with the flow and join whatever the consensus happens to be. Because Jeff is not here this week for Thanksgiving week, we're also subtracting the Dog Nation Daily Audience as well so that we're able to have another flow that can be established here. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it'll be fun as we kind of go through all of this. So our first game to pick for the week is Georgia traveling to South Carolina at Columbia. The Bulldogs fresh off a very impressive offensive showing last week against Mississippi State, maybe a defensive effort that left something to be desired. But in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium, in a revenge game after South Carolina won outright against Georgia a week ago. Dogs big favorite once again, though. 21.5 points on the road at Columbia. Mike Griffith here on Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, live for a change. Go ahead and give us your thought on the Dogs and the Gamecocks with UGA favored by 21.5.
Yeah, I do think last year's game factors NBA. I mean, that was the first time in history that an unranked team beat a top 5 Georgia team in Sanford Stadium. And, I know it's Mike Bobo and Kirby's old buddy, but Kirby's got enough issues right now that he knows he needs to win impressively. I do think coaches are aware of the betting line, even though they would never say that. I'm going to take Georgia to win this game impressively, 38-13. I think somebody told Kirby that, yes, you can throw the ball on first down, and you'd have a quarterback that's capable of that. So 38-13, Georgia over South Carolina.
So Mike is on the side of UGA. Connor Raleigh, what do you think?
This extra half point really gives me pause here, but I'm still going to take Georgia. I think they're going to continue to throw the ball well. The South Carolina defense isn't all that good. Certainly it's not as good as the Mississippi State one that Georgia saw last week. You wonder where your head is at with the South Carolina team. I think Georgia's motivated. They want to come out. They want to win. They want to look pretty, and they're going to do just enough to win by 21.5 points.
You know, for years and years in this show, I never picked against UGA. I don't enjoy doing that, even in days when I'm skeptical of the Dogs' ability to go out and cover a big number. I typically like at least be on the side of the home team if for fun, if no other reason. If they're playing, I'm usually laying when it comes to the points that are involved with all of that. However, I did go against Georgia last week, and it turned out, at least from a point spread standpoint, I was right. With 21.5, as Connor said, half point seems like a pretty big deal here. What's a bigger deal for me is the fact that the Gamecocks this year with Mike Bobo as offensive coordinator have found something they really haven't had a lot of before, which is running game. I sometimes am skeptical when coaches maybe go into a game with an idea towards trying to keep it close. Bobo, knowing that the Gamecocks are depleted from a roster standpoint, overmatched from a talent standpoint, maybe there's a scenario in which he tries to use that running game to keep it close, to grind that clock. I think that brings the 21.5 in play. And with that in mind, even though Georgia's actually covered in its only 2 trips to Columbia under Kirby Smart, including a pretty average team back in 2018, or I should say 2016, they got a cover there, and obviously a dominant performance in 2018. Even with that history for Smart in Columbia, I'm actually going to take South Carolina plus the 21.5, closer than the experts would think. But, Dari, the flow is on the side of UGA. You want to go with the flow and take Georgia.
Well, let me just get a little tasty beverage here, a little toast to Georgia's new quarterback, JT Daniels. What a game, that he put on this past weekend. With this game, we're going to have to see what the weather and rain is going to do Saturday night. That could have an impact on how this game is played.
Is it supposed to rain?
Yeah, it's supposed to rain. It's kind of off and on. There are some different forecasts out there, ranging anywhere from 1 to 3 inches, depending on where the storm moves. So
I would also say you've got to be careful for a small roster right now. South Carolina has lost some players. Every one of these tests is going to be closely watched as well. So be careful with that too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could beat South Carolina's secondary, and that's what JT 5-star is going to do. He's going to chunk it up all over the place. I don't think they're going to have a problem doing that unless the weather impacts that. Kirby's played South Carolina pretty conservatively over the years. But with his buddy getting fired, I think he may try to put some points on there this week and kind of cut it loose a bit. My concerns for Georgia are, can they run the ball efficiently enough? They've been getting worse week after week after week. The offensive line's just not creating holes. Can the defense get better? The defense has been underperforming considering how much talent is on there. Very concerning for me, and can they cover a spread this big? I said I wouldn't take Georgia with large spreads until they showed me something. Well, I saw promise last week with JT and that offense and passing game, but the running game is concerning, has issues, and same with the defense. I think 21.5 is too much to lay right now on the road. I'm going to take the Gamecocks here. Over the last 10 meetings, the Gamecocks are 6-4 against the spread against Georgia, and Georgia's failed to cover in 4 of its last 5 games. Also, Georgia is 2-7 against the spread against a team with a losing record. I think they fall in that trap again this week against the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I think those are all really good numbers, Dari. Well done there. It's Go With the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. And Dari knows a whole lot more in life than just picking football games. He and his company are also there to handle you and any of your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. I'll tell you, last night, I think it's 30-something degrees outside of my house. That meant the heat was on. And I know a lot of you, when you flip that switch, turn on that furnace, you hope the heat's flowing out of those vents the way that it's supposed to be. If you have any concern about that, especially as you head towards the holiday season, go ahead and get the peace of mind that you need by getting your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Check out my friends online at RS Andrews, rsandrews.com. Next game in the SEC, I think is a sneaky fun game. This is Florida, fresh off a game last week with Vanderbilt, probably a little closer than the experts thought it should be. Kentucky absolutely lambasted by Alabama by a 63-3 final. Also a little bit of a revenge aspect here. Last time Kentucky was in Gainesville, they did win the game outright. That is where they return on Saturday. Florida 23.5-point favorites, obviously with its eye towards running out the rest of this string, winning the SEC East, and getting to the SEC championship. Big number for Florida, Mike, minus 23.5, hosting Kentucky. Where are you on this game?
Yeah, I didn't think Florida looked real impressive against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt held Florida out of the end zone. Derek Mason, I think, just does such a great job. Even though his team hasn't won a game, I think he's still one of the league's best coaches, just nothing to work with. Kentucky, meanwhile, was overwhelmed by the best team in the SEC, and Nick Saban certainly didn't hold back. If Florida could run it up, they would. But I don't think Florida can run it up on Kentucky. I mean, I think Kentucky's defense is salty. I think there's some pride there. They've traditionally given Florida some trouble. You remember that last year, Kyle Trask came off the bench, I believe, to lead Florida to a win over Kentucky. I think Florida wins this game, but the spread is just too much for me. I'm going to make it 31-14 Florida over Kentucky.
A lot of folks have talked about scheduling weirdness this year. I'm sure the Kentucky folks not too happy about the idea of being at Alabama, at Florida on back-to-back weeks. That has turned out to be a pretty rough stretch for them. Connor, how about for you with Florida hosting Kentucky minus 23.5 is the number?
So right now we don't know where Kentucky is with some of their COVID issues. They were missing their leading rusher last week. They were missing their starting punter, who was also their holder. I know Florida, as Mike pointed out, didn't look great last week. And there is some, Kentucky is a salty team. But the week after just getting your brains beat in by Alabama, you know about the body blow effect. I don't love it here, but at 23.5, if this was maybe 24.5, I would probably lean towards Kentucky here. But at 23.5, that's just enough for me to take the Gators here at home.
Yeah, I'm tempted to take Kentucky as well for a number of reasons. For the same thing I said about South Carolina, for a team that can run the ball, assuming that Kentucky is healthy enough to be able to do that on Saturday, that in itself can be a recipe for keeping it below the number. But here's the flyer I'm going to take on this. And I expected Florida to cover with flying colors last week against Vanderbilt. It was a little eye-opening for me that they didn't, not in terms of them losing a game like this, but Florida had just been really good against the spread for really last couple of years, especially when favored by a double-digit number. What this comes down to for me is for Kentucky on the road last week, shell shock giving up 63, weird week of practice this week where you essentially have to have some sort of pause for Thanksgiving in the midst of all of this. And now going back on the road to Gainesville again, I do think a lot of Florida folks remember in year one of Dan Mullen, Cash Daniel doing the Stone Cold Steve Austin stuff. I think there could be a little bit of lingering. Florida kind of just wants to show up here and kick around Kentucky a little bit. That tiny little motivational edge is enough for me to take Florida in this spot. Pretty big number, but I think that Kentucky is reeling, and I don't think they regroup until after this trip to Florida is done. So minus 23.5, I'll take the Gators. That puts the flow on the side of the Gators. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Florida?
Yeah, I'm going to come back with Florida, coming back at home. I think this number is a lot easier for them to cover than the 32 points, from last week on the road. This is going to just be back-to-back blowouts for Kentucky. Mark it up. Florida's going to roll.
Yeah, so there you go on that. Next game, we do have one of our traditional Thanksgiving week rivalry games. It is the Iron Bowl. People will remember Alabama last year at Auburn, lost straight up, but get a chance to look for some revenge inside Bryant-Denny Stadium this time as a 24-point favorite against an Auburn team that's suddenly playing a little better football, putting some wins together, including a double-digit win against Tennessee last Saturday that included a Smoke Monday, pick 600-yard interception return. Mike, with Alabama minus 24, fresh off 63 points against Kentucky, what do you think about this game?
It's the best rivalry in college football. The home and home aspect is awesome. Having been to it in Birmingham and haven't seen them go home and home. So much emotion in the game. Both fan bases are so into this game. Even in years when Auburn's not that great, we've seen them beat Alabama. 2017, they beat Alabama by double digits. Nick Saban doesn't go to the bench for Tua Tagovailoa. Everyone, oh my gosh, everybody forgets conveniently that Nick didn't play Tua when he had him against Auburn, and very fortunate for Alabama to back into the 2017 playoffs and then get a better draw than Georgia, which of course did play the extra game and win the SEC championship game. And really kind of a criminal year there to see Alabama rewarded, even though they lost by double digits to their rivals. I think they'll beat Auburn. Auburn is playing better football. The version of Auburn football we're seeing right now has kind of grown up since they played Georgia, and Georgia won that game impressively. Back when a lot of people thought Stetson Bennett was a great quarterback. I'm going to take Alabama to win this game 41-27. The 24 is a little bit too much only because of the way Auburn plays this game. I think Alabama is definitely 3 or 4 touchdowns better than Auburn, but I don't think that resonates when these teams take the field because of the nature of this very special rivalry. And so I'm going to make it 41-27 Alabama over Auburn.
So is Auburn plus the points for Mike Griffith? Connor, what do you think?
Print the shirts. Just go ahead, print the championship shirts. Alabama is the best team in college football this year. It is not close. You look at this game specifically, Bo Nix home road splits, they're very drastic in terms of what you get. Tank Bigsby is questionable this week. Alabama lost this game a year ago. They did not get a chance to have their other revenge game against LSU. I think Alabama's going to come out motivated. They're going to want to make a statement, and they're going to do that. They did it against the Kentucky team we all thought was pretty good. They're going to roll up the points on Auburn this Saturday. Give me Alabama here minus the 24.
So, Daria, I told you this last week that one of the things that has frustrated me the most about my picks thus far this season, the times in which I get a little too cute and ask underdogs to do things they're just not capable of doing. I think I've been wrong picking against Alabama at least 4 times thus far this season. That's just kind of a dumb thing to be able to do. Auburn has had success against Alabama. Almost all of that comes at Jordan-Hare Stadium, where Auburn really has success against just about everybody. They have been a very good team at home the last few years, even against the spread. This game's obviously at Bryant-Denny. The other thing here is, and I've cited these numbers, many times over the years, Alabama as a small favorite, not always guaranteed money. They don't have a spectacular record against the spread when favored by single digits. Alabama plus 30, or I should say as a 30-plus point favorite, they're not always spectacular there. But there's that Goldilocks zone between that sort of like 2 touchdown number and 3 touchdown number where Alabama just seemingly never fails to cover. That 24 kind of falls right there in line with that. I do think Auburn's an improved team from where it was at one point in the season. I don't think it matters on Saturday for a multitude of reasons. 24 is nowhere near too much to get me to reconsider Alabama here. I'll take Bama minus the 24. That puts the flow on the side of Alabama. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide.
Tons of points for an Iron Bowl rivalry game. But, Auburn gave up 464 yards to Tennessee last week. Bama's going to give it to them. They're going to roll. I'm rolling with Bama. They're firing on all cylinders. Too much offense for them. Probably somewhere, Auburn may score kind of late or something. They're never going to be in this game. Like never. I'll go ahead and just say that right now. But it's probably going to be like a 49-24 final. Alabama.
Of course, Tank Bigsby injury situation to keep your eye on, stuff like that there as well, that also complicate this. Mike Griffith a moment ago said Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama is the best rivalry in college football. It is certainly among the most prestigious, but for my money, there's nothing better than a good Jerry Springer-style war between Ole Miss and Mississippi State with nothing to play for. The only thing that exists is the nasty spite that one side has for the other. If nothing else, I wish it was on Thanksgiving night, but I love the Egg Bowl. That's our next game to pick here with Ole Miss hosting Mississippi State. The first time for both these coaches, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach. My only Egg Bowl complaint, other than it not being on Thanksgiving night this year, is the fact that Leach and Kiffin probably like each other more than I would prefer Egg Bowl coaches to be. I kind of like the old days of Billy Brewer and Jackie Sherrill when they would both just take constant shots across the bow at each other. But nonetheless, Rebels favored by 9.5 against the Bulldogs. Mike, what do you think about the Egg Bowl?
This was tough, because, Mississippi State and their staff, they came in and outcoached Kirby Smart. Their players won the line of scrimmage against Georgia. With 49 scholarship guys, they played a top 10 team within a touchdown in Sanford Stadium. And you think that could carry over against an Ole Miss team that's been kind of up and down. But this is just about matchups to me. And if JT Daniels can throw for 401, Matt Corral can throw for 501. And Ole Miss has got a high-powered offense. I don't think State has the secondary. They've got the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss, actually, I believe they might lead the league in rushing. They're pretty good offense. I mean, they do a lot of things really well. Defensively, not too much to write home about, but they can't possibly play zone defense worse than Georgia did. So I'm going to take Ole Miss in this game, 37-17, as Georgia fans avert their eyes from the scoreboard and focus on what Georgia's doing against South Carolina.
So I'm colorblind. I can't tell if your hat's red or orange, but if it's red, you've kind of got a little bit of an Ole Miss vibe going on there.
I guess I do. I didn't really think about it. I couldn't find.
Is that red or is that orange? I can't quite tell.
Yeah, I don't wear any orange, so yeah, it's absolutely not orange.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, so you got a little bit of an Ole Miss vibe going there. So Mike goes hotty toddy with his Egg Bowl pick. Connor Riley, I know you like the Egg Bowl like I do. What do you think about the game?
Yeah, it's an absolute travesty that this game is not being played on Thanksgiving night. I don't know why we couldn't figure that out. As far as the game being played on Saturday, Mississippi State only having 49 scholarship players last week gives me a lot of concern, especially when Ole Miss had the week off as their game against Texas A&M got backed up. Because of that, because of the way Ole Miss plays, because of how last year's game ended, let's not forget Mississippi State somehow won this game because of an Elijah Moore excessive celebration. Let's just leave it at that there. And then Matt Luke and Joe Moorhead both end up getting fired after that game. Give me Ole Miss here. 10 is more than enough points they're going to win by this game.
By the way, pretty interesting backstory from our buddy Nick Suss this week on some of the things that Matt Corral said this week about that game-winning touchdown drive. I'm telling you, it is not a classy rivalry. It is not America at its best, but it is at times America at its most entertaining. I love the Egg Bowl, and I love Ole Miss in this game, even with a pretty big number here. Fact of the matter is that Mike Leach has been around for a long time, and Mike Leach is just not a big game rivalry coach. I don't think he understands the nature of them. While he was at Pullman, continually downplaying the rivalry that, listen, we don't necessarily care about Pac-12 football, but out there, the Apple Cup between Washington State's a pretty big deal. Washington obliterated Washington State continually. Mike Leach continually just kind of shrugged it off and said they have better players than us. What do you want me to do? That kind of stuff does not work in the SEC. I think Lane Kiffin understands rivalry games better. I think Kiffin knows what he can earn for himself by winning this game, by winning it in a pretty way. I think Ole Miss is a huge play on Saturday, even minus the 9.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Rebels here. It's actually a clean sweep. Dari, does the clean sweep make you nervous, or do you want to go with the flow and say hotty toddy with us?
Break out the broom. I like hotty toddies. This is going to be one of the best rival games to watch over the next 5 years. Leach versus Kiffin. Got to get your popcorn ready. It's just going to get better with time. I'm kind of with Mike here. Georgia passed all over Mississippi State. Ole Miss is going to do it even better. I mean, they're lighting up that scoreboard. Round one goes to Kiffin.
But you're also, Dari, a pretty veteran gambler. I think there's something to be said for when a team plays, it's like 90-something percentile game, which I would say Mississippi State probably did last week. When you're doing things better than you've done it in weeks and weeks and weeks, the idea that you're going to do that 2 weeks in a row is probably not a great bet all the way around, and that's another reason to like Ole Miss in the spot.
Probably not. I don't know. How much that how well they did. Last week was. I mean, it obviously was stuff they were doing pretty well, but I mean, Georgia's defense was really soft. I think Mississippi State's going to get some points in this game. I mean, they're going to be able to do some things. I think Ole Miss has just got way too much firepower.
So speaking of firepower, a little less firepower on the LSU side of things after a blowout win against Texas A&M last week. That's the next game we're going to look at. Aggies playing what seems like the first game in about a month. Get a chance to host LSU on Saturday. LSU fresh off a win last week at Arkansas. Another controversial loss for the Hogs from an officiating standpoint. My, oh my, you want some fun message board stuff, go look and see what those Arkansas people are saying about the league this week on message boards if you want to settle in and enjoy yourself with that just for a bit. But nonetheless, this one's going to turn into a little bit of a rivalry. I think there's a lot of bad blood between these two teams and the way that these two games have played out the last 2 years. So, Mike, Aggies back at it, 14-point favorites, hosting the defending national champs. What do you think about this game? Mike, I believe you may be muted. Mike, I think you may be muted.
Sorry about that. I said, you're right. It is a rivalry game. I mean, these games were good even before A&M joined the SEC. And A&M hasn't played since November 7th. A little bit of that Florida COVID scheduling here, everybody giving the Aggies plenty of room to get healthy and plenty of room, frankly, to recharge. I know they're not supposed to practice, but I have a hard time believing that those guys aren't getting together and working on things offensively. You saw how refreshed Florida looked after their 2-week COVID break via the SEC scheduling model. I'm going to take A&M to win this game and cover the spread. I think LSU is playing better. I think they're a team that's kind of starting to settle in a little bit, get some confidence. It's impressive to win on the road against the well-coached Arkansas team. Give me A&M 38-23 over LSU.
All right, so is Texas A&M for Mike Griffith. Connor Riley, what do you think about the Aggies and the Tigers?
Don't feel particularly strong about either side here. I guess I'll take an underdog here on the road, LSU. I think there's a lot of pride in this team. I was admittedly impressed with how they came out and played against Arkansas a week ago. I thought they had a good game plan to sort of cover up some of the deficiencies in their defense. So give me LSU here plus the 14 points.
I certainly think that Texas A&M gets a shot in the arm from a public perception standpoint, but what's going to happen with the college football playoff announcement. By the time that folks see this show, they'll already know A&M's ranking. We're doing this prior to the selection committee making their first deliberation. I do expect Texas A&M to have a very high number. I think there's a scenario in which they could even be inside the top 4 when the announcement comes out tonight. So there'll be a little steam around that. Sometimes playing with that is not an easy thing for teams to do. I do happen to think the Texas A&M is pretty good. I think the head-to-head win against Florida certainly proved something for the Aggies here. And LSU's obviously had its problems. It's also another one of these scenarios where having to go back on the road again on that Thanksgiving week might be a little bit of a tricky spot for an LSU team that's down a lot of players as it is, issues in a major way at quarterback with the lingering situation involving Miles Brennan. And as I said before, after the fight 2 years ago, LSU really strutting into Baton Rouge for the blowout win that they really called their shot on before the game. I think Texas A&M is eager to return the favor. This is an Aggies team that's been in the SEC since 2012, but really didn't have a lot of SEC history for years and years. They were only known as the team that upset Alabama in 2012. Now they feel more a part of this league because of really a smoldering rivalry here with LSU. I think the next chapter of that is on Saturday. I think A&M adds an extra touchdown late for a little bit of a wink and a nod on the way out the door. I like the Aggies pretty big here, Dari. It puts the flow on the side of Texas A&M. You want to go with the flow and take the Aggies and gig them.
Yeah, I like the Aggies here too. You have LSU with a freshman quarterback going on the road. I thought Arkansas should have won last week. But, when they do that, their game plan, as you can see, they're going to try to run the ball, and that's going right into the teeth of the Aggies defense. I mean, they've been rock solid against the run this year. You factor in last year with this little bad blood. I mean, Burrow blew them out. I think Mon, he's the senior now, and he's going to want to rectify that. I think it's in the back of his head. I think he's going to have a big game this week. There should be a fair amount of points scored in this game. Like mashed potatoes and turkey this week. Another good pairing in this game is the Aggies and the over.
Ooh, I like that. That's a fun thing to think about. Good stuff there. Let's go with the flow presented by R.S. Andrews. Don't forget, check out R.S. Andrews for all your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. I love making the recommendation to you for them because I know they're going to show up on time. They're going to do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. One of the reasons why we love R.S. Andrews here, and it's one of the reasons why we enjoy doing Go with the Flow presented by R.S. Andrews on the Dog Nation video channels each and every Friday. We'll come back to the SEC before we're done. We'll give our thoughts on the point total in the Georgia-South Carolina game. But for now, a couple of stops outside the SEC, both these holiday Friday games. Love college football on the day after Thanksgiving on a Friday. A couple pretty good ones in the Big 12 here to begin. The Cyclones of Iowa State back in the AP Top 25, traveling to Austin to take on Texas. Texas, of course, a couple of weeks ago got their marquee win of the season when they knocked off previously undefeated Oklahoma State. They now stand as a 1.5 favorite against Iowa State. Mike, what do you think about Texas hosting Iowa State as a 1.5 favorite?
Yeah, I got it. I don't know much about the outside the SEC. Admittedly, I I don't really have a whole lot of time. I researched this game a little bit, just looking some interesting things up. So if Iowa State wins out against Texas and West Virginia in the Big 12 title game, they'll win their first outright Big 12 title since 1912. And they only have one loss. So they would be considered for a playoff spot. We know how concerned the College Football Playoff Committee sitting ADs are. You know, that Georgia Tech and Florida AD and Oklahoma AD, you know, they're real concerned about making sure conference champions get in over at large teams. We saw that with Oklahoma getting in ahead of Georgia in 2018. Never mind, they trailed Alabama 28-0 after 16 and a half minutes. The committee did their job, by goodness. I don't think they're going to have this problem, though. Iowa State has not finished seasons well traditionally, and Texas has won 3 games with a combination of 7 overtimes. I think when you win, it becomes a habit. The game is in Texas. Iowa State hasn't won in Austin since 2010. So give me Texas in this game, 23-17. They cover the 1.5 spread.
Connor, what do you think of Texas for Mike? I'm sorry.
Just to clarify one thing there, Iowa State also lost to Louisiana Lafayette by 17 to open the season. So they're not a real playoff contender as far as that goes. But I actually like them here. They won 45-0. They beat up Kansas State a week ago. They're playing good football. I like what they're going to be able to do. I think Texas is a little overrated here. This game opened up as a pick 'em, and because of the way Texas is Texas, it got bet up to 1.5 for the Horns. I like Iowa State here as an underdog. I think they're probably the better team. Mike rightly points out that winning games in overtimes, that also shows me that sometimes Texas might play with its food a little bit, and this Iowa State team isn't one you want to mess around with.
Yeah, at this stage of the game, I actually think Matt Campbell's a better coach than I think Tom Herman is. I think Campbell's a pretty good coach for Iowa State. It's a matter of if he ever wants to leave and take a different job. I think he's a pretty good coach. I also think there's one of those scenarios where, just broadly speaking, I like Texas when they're an underdog and typically hate them when they're a favorite. Classic example was against Oklahoma State a couple of weeks ago. That's the classic Tom Herman game. He seems to be able to dial something up when expectations are low, and he just can't seem to ever capitalize on those moments when expectations are high. So Iowa State here for me is, and listen, I don't have anything else on this game. Like anything else beyond that, I'm done. But sometimes you don't need much more than that. Campbell's a good coach. Texas is usually a terrible favorite. That's all I need for Iowa State here in this game. I think it actually can be a pretty fun game because I do think the Cyclones can be fun to watch at times. So I'll take Iowa State. That puts the flow on the side of the Cyclones. You want to go with the flow, Dari, there for Iowa State.
Well, I mean, this game's pretty much for all the marbles in the Big 12. You know, they're both trying to get to the Big 12 title game. Ellinger has been doing it all for the Longhorns. He's the team's leading rusher. He's their leader. This game's really a toss-up. You know, like Mike said, Texas plays a lot of these games close, and Texas usually wins a lot of these close games. However, I'm going to go with the team that's more hungry, and that's the Cyclones. I think they this year they feel it, they see it, and they want it more. I think also there's rumors of Tom Herman. I mean, he may get axed at the end of this year. You know, they just lost their the biggest recruit that they had decommitted and went to Ohio State last week, and there's a lot of rumors right now. So Tom Herman's kind of on the hot seat, and this could be the nail in the coffin if they lose this to Iowa State.
I think that's a very good point, Dari. And then what I think is probably the game of the week, in at least outside the SEC, at least I'm hoping it turns out to be this way. It has all the feel of a fun Black Friday game. Kenan Stadium's a beautiful venue, better quarterback, getting points. North Carolina back in the AP Top 25, hosting Notre Dame, who has really been on a little bit of a roll this season, including maybe the most significant one of the season to date against Clemson. Notre Dame getting that win a couple of weeks ago. They are on the road here as a 4.5-point favorite. What do you think about the Irish in Chapel Hill, Mike?
Yeah, I like Notre Dame. You know, what a great job they've done. You know, it's amazing, you know, how normal and quickly the ACC looks. You add Notre Dame to the conference and they just walk right through it. I think that's probably been a slap in the face to ACC football people that actually tried to make the case that conference had any sort of depth. I think Notre Dame has disproven that. Beating Clemson had a good quarterback. It's not like, I mean, look, if Trevor Lawrence is there, they probably win. But the fact that Notre Dame beat Clemson was a real eye-opener for me. North Carolina's got a great quarterback in Sam Howell. That's wonderful. But they give up a lot of points. And you got to play football on both sides of the ball. And I have not been impressed at all with North Carolina's defense. They don't do it for me. They gave up 45 points to Virginia Tech this year. They lost to Florida State 31-28. Give me Notre Dame to win this game. I know everybody likes the idea of an upset, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to take Notre Dame to win this game convincingly and stink up what everybody thinks will be a good game with a 37-17 win in Chapel Hill.
I need to correct myself at least just briefly. I very quickly called Sam Howell the best quarterback in this game. I'm sure Ian Book would like to maybe dispute that a little bit. Connor, your thoughts on the Irish and the Tar Heels?
As Mike really well laid out there at the end, North Carolina's defense is just so bad. I can't trust to pick them here. If it was just even slightly better, I would give real credence to thinking that they could cover and potentially even win this game. But I think Notre Dame, they had the week off last week. I think they're going to come out ready to play. I know North Carolina did as well. So I think this Notre Dame team is focused. They know what's in front of them. They have a pretty decent idea that, hey, if you can get to the ACC title game unbeaten, you've got, I would think, a pretty decent chance of getting into the college football playoff if things shake out a certain way. And I think they're going to come out focused. Brian Kelly's a pretty good coach, and they're going to come out and beat Matt Brown, Sam Howell, and the North Carolina Tar Heels by more than 4.5 points.
So listen, I've got no analysis on this. I've gotten other than exactly what Mike said. I'm going to be home on Friday. I just want it to be a good game. I just want to watch. I mean, whether Howell's better than Ian Book or not, playing at home, Sam Howell is a really good quarterback. The idea that you could get a little Black Friday fun of Notre Dame, which right now is very much a team on the inside track for college football playoff berth, the fact they may have to defend that status, not a hostile environment. We don't really have those in COVID times, but at least in an uncomfortable spot playing away from South Bend. That's what I want to be true, not just because I'm a Notre Dame hater, although to a degree that I am, but just because it's just more entertaining that way. So, the idea of sitting around and watching, Notre Dame coast to an easy victory the day after Thanksgiving with a bunch of leftovers right there on my plate in my lap, that's not what I want. Give me the Tar Heels plus the 4.5. It's not a huge number. Give me North Carolina here. The flow, though, is on the side of the Fighting Irish. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
Well, I think this is definitely going to be an entertaining game. It follows up right after the Texas Iowa State game, which is at noon. So I think Friday is going to be just the two good games back to back. The line opened at 7.5 on this, and it's already down to 4 right now. So big money is betting on UNC here, and so far this season with the games that we've been picking. And the big moves on the lines this year with the sharp money, it's been pretty much right. I think all but one game so far this year that we've looked at. North Carolina has a high-powered offense. Everyone knows that. But they don't do that well when they go against a grade A defense, and that's what Notre Dame has. And like we all said, Connor and Mike, North Carolina defense is absolutely awful. I like the Irish here in a game that I think is going to have a ton of scoring. This is also a good parlay to go with the over 66. I think it's going to be back and forth all day.
Yeah, listen, I like that. That sounds like a great time right there. All right, speaking of over-unders, let's come back to Georgia, South Carolina before we're done. In Columbia on Saturday, the expected total is 49. Mike, you want to go over or under the 49?
Yeah, I'm going to go over. I had a 38-13 score, and that just kind of ekes right over the line. JT Daniels is the real deal, man, and not even Kirby Smart can stop him.
Connor Riley, what do you think about the over-under for Saturday?
Yeah, I have questions about this Georgia defense. Looks like they're going to face another freshman quarterback in Luke Doty for South Carolina there. I think they're going to score points. I have Georgia covering in this game, and I think when the spread is as big as it is, you kind of got to root for the over there. So I will take the over 49 here.
I think what really should scare you, though, if you're isolating just the over-under pick is the fact that South Carolina has just not really scored on anybody. Now, coming into last week, Mississippi State hadn't done a lot of that either. But the Gamecocks offense has really been tough. I'm a Mike Bobo fan. It's not been a very good year for Mike Bobo. Maybe a little too stubborn to make a quarterback change away from Colin Hill. Stop me if you've heard that before. But maybe some of that for South Carolina does sound like we'll see a good bit more of Luke Doty maybe on Saturday. I'm also going to be a little slow to change my mind on Georgia being a juggernaut offense that can carry a number by itself. I'm just going to be a little slow on that. I was wrong by picking under a week ago, but I'm not quite ready yet to start putting Georgia in the over ranks. I'm going to take a flyer on the under again here, Dari. But the flow is on the side of the over. You want to take the dogs in the over?
This one's tough. I really have no feel for this. I think there's a tricky game line here. There's a lot going on, a lot of inconsistency from both sides of the ball for Georgia. The Gamecocks are just really bad. I've kind of been going back and forth on it. I'm still going back and forth, and man, I was going to go over, but you know what? I think I'm gonna take the under here. I thought it would go over because I think they're probably going to give up maybe 14 points. I think Georgia gets somewhere in the 30s in this game because I do like JT to kind of sling it all over the place. You know what? I'll go over. I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna stick with the over. I'll take the over. I'm taking South Carolina in the over. I think Georgia's just got some issues on defense. So
you were talking about like a 35-14 type game to get you up there to that number. That's certainly what Georgia was able to do a week ago, and so we'll see. We'll
or
see
maybe 38, like Mike said, 38 for Georgia. I can see that. 5 touchdowns and a field goal, maybe 4 JT touchdowns, and maybe a defensive score in this game.
Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Mike and Connor, thank you so much for being live. I say air quotes live because obviously the show is pre-recorded, but your presence here is in real time. So I appreciate you both of you taking some time to join us for the show today.
As always, it's a pleasure.
And Dari, I hope you enjoy the games this weekend, and a happy Thanksgiving to you and all of your family and friends, and that the turkey tastes good and that the picks turn out well for you as also.
Yeah, definitely. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone on here and all the fans out there. And go Dogs. Hopefully JT can keep slinging some touchdowns.
I'll certainly second both those emotions. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. For those of you who are gracious enough to tune in and watch us each and every week, and as you get ready for Georgia football on Saturday, I hope it's another fun one with JT Daniels, the Georgia offense, scoring some big points, and Georgia getting a nice measure of revenge against the Gamecocks after the loss to the Gamecocks in Athens a season ago. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanks for being here, part of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. We'll look forward to talking to you again next time.